Morning light always arrived softly at Riverside General Hospital. Not harsh. Not loud. Just a warm, gentle glow slipping between the leaves of the courtyard trees, settling over the stone walkway like a quiet blessing. Nurse Lena Morgan liked to arrive early, before the rush, before the noise, before the weight of the day pressed itself onto her shoulders. These quiet steps through the courtyard were her few minutes of peace. But lately, someone else had joined her morning ritual. A dog. A calm, golden mixed dog with soft amber eyes and a coat that caught the sunrise like warm honey. He wasn't scruffy. He wasn't wild. He looked like he belonged somewhere, just not here. And yet, he was here every single morning. Lena's shoes tapped lightly on the stone path as she walked toward the hydrangea bench. And right on cue, the dog lifted his head. Not startled. Not excited. Just aware. As if he'd been waiting specifically for her. Lena slowed, a small breath drifting out of her chest. "Morning," she whispered, almost embarrassed that she was greeting him like a coworker. The dog stood up slowly, tail low, calm, gentle, then walked toward her with careful, deliberate steps. No jumping. No barking. Just that quiet, intentional walk. She stopped. He stopped. They met in the same space they always met in. A soft pocket of sunlight between the bench and the path. He looked at her with an expression that felt knowing. Not needy. Not demanding. Just present. Lena crouched slightly, resting one hand on her knee. "You're here again," she murmured. "Like clockwork." The dog blinked slowly, then tilted his head, not in a cartoonish way, but in a thoughtful, grounded way. A real way. He stepped forward another inch and gently touched his nose to the back of her hand. Warm. Steady. Not a push. More like a greeting he'd practiced. Lena felt her breath catch, not from fear, but from something softer. Something she couldn't name yet. She let her fingers brush lightly against his fur. It was warm from the sunlight. Soft, too. "You're a sweetheart, aren't you?" The dog didn't react with excitement. He simply held still, as if letting her set the pace. A calm soul. A patient one. The hospital doors hissed open behind her, a distant sound, but the dog's eyes didn't follow the noise. Instead, he looked toward a specific window on the second floor. The same one as yesterday. The same one as every day he'd appeared. Lena followed his gaze slowly. Room 214. For a moment, her throat tightened. That room carried memories. Difficult ones. Tender ones. She exhaled softly and looked back at him. "You always look up there," she said quietly. "Why?" The dog didn't answer, of course. But something in his posture, steady shoulders, quiet breath, made her feel like the question mattered. Like he understood she was asking more than just curiosity. A light breeze moved through the courtyard, brushing against Lena's hair. The dog's fur shifted gently with it. He sat down beside her, not touching, but close enough that she felt his warmth. Her shift would start in a few minutes. But for the first time in months, she didn't feel the usual heaviness. Instead, she felt settled. Grounded. Held by a presence she didn't expect. She looked at him again. "You waiting for someone?" she asked softly. The dog lowered his head for a moment, then lifted it again, eyes warm, steady. It wasn't an answer. But somehow, it felt like one. Lena straightened slowly and dusted off her scrubs. "Well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow," she said with a small smile. The dog remained seated, watching her take a few steps away. But then, just before she reached the entrance, she heard a soft sound. Not a whine, more like a gentle exhale. She turned. The dog was still watching the same second-floor window. Calm. Focused. Something about it tugged at her heart. "You're not just wandering," she whispered. The dog blinked once. Slowly. Purposefully. Lena placed her badge against the door scanner. The lock clicked. She paused once more before stepping inside, her eyes drifting to the morning visitor who had quietly rearranged her thoughts. Something was happening here. Something warm. Something meaningful. And she could already feel it beginning to unfold. What the dog sensed would bring a peace she didn't know she needed. The next morning arrived with the same quiet softness, the kind of sunrise that felt like it apologized for waking the world. Golden light stretched across the courtyard stones in gentle streaks, warming the cool air. Lena stepped through the garden gate, and there he was. Exactly where she expected him. Exactly how he always sat. Calm. Still. Present. The golden mixed dog rose the moment she appeared, tail lowering in a slow, respectful sway, almost like a bow rather than a wag. Lena felt her chest loosen in the same way it had the day before. "You really are waiting for me," she said quietly. Her voice came out softer than she expected. The dog walked toward her again, not quickly, not excitedly, but with that same intentional rhythm. Like each step was chosen. When he reached her, he paused. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then, gently, he placed his paw on her shoe. Lena froze. Not because of fear, but because of the tenderness of it. A small, deliberate act. Calm. Almost thoughtful. "Hey," she breathed, crouching. "What's that mean, The dog lifted his paw back and touched it to her shoe again, just once, before sitting down. Not needy. Not playful. Just purposeful. She let out a soft exhale, touched by the gesture in a way she didn't fully understand. The morning breeze moved through the courtyard, carrying the faint smell of hospital coffee being brewed inside. Lena rested one hand lightly against the dog's fur. "You're becoming a part of my day," she whispered. The dog seemed to respond only with a quiet stillness, like he was listening. But then, he lifted his head and nudged her wrist gently. A soft, reassuring touch. Not a push. Not an urge. More like a reminder. Lena blinked. "You want me to follow?" she asked. He didn't move forward. But his gaze shifted slowly, deliberately, toward the courtyard path. The same path he'd glanced down yesterday. Toward the hospital. Toward that same window. Room 214. Lena hesitated. Not because she was scared, but because the familiarity of that room brought up a quiet ache she wasn't sure she was ready for. Yet the dog's calm presence softened the edges of it. "All right," she murmured. "Show me what you want me to see." She stood. The dog stepped forward, just one gentle step, and then walked in that direction. Not pulling ahead. Not looking back to check if she was following. Simply trusting that she would. And she did. They walked together until they reached the garden corner directly beneath the second-floor window. The morning sunlight warmed the bushes, creating a soft patch of brightness around them. The dog stopped. Saturday. Looked up. Lena followed his gaze. Room 214 again. Her throat tightened. "That was Mr. Lawson's room," she said under her breath. "My last patient before I switched to night shifts." The dog didn't move. Didn't react. Just kept looking at the window. Calm. Quiet. Almost reverent. It made Lena's chest ache in a different way now, softer, sadder, but peaceful too. "Did you know him?" she asked gently. The dog lowered his head once, as if acknowledging the sound of the name even if he couldn't understand the words. Then he looked at her. Those steady amber eyes. So full of something she couldn't describe. Connection. Recognition. Memory. Something deeper than coincidence. Lena sat on the low stone wall nearby, letting the moment breathe. The dog moved closer, not touching her, but sitting in that calm, companion-like posture he always held. His presence felt grounding, like he was somehow lifting some invisible weight she carried. "You're not just showing up randomly," she whispered. "You have a reason." The dog blinked slowly again, his calm gaze almost answering her. Lena looked at her hands. "You know, before he passed, Mr. Lawson used to talk about his dog. Every night. Every shift." Her voice softened. "He said the dog waited for him every day by the yard gate. Rain or shine. No matter what." She paused. He loved that dog more than anything. The courtyard wind moved through the hydrangeas, brushing petals gently across the path. Lena looked down. The dog had rested his paw near her shoe again, not touching this time, but close enough that she felt the quiet intention of it. "You're reminding me of something, aren't you?" she whispered. The dog's ear twitched in the soft morning sun. Not an answer. But not nothing. A subtle intuition. A quiet message she hadn't fully heard yet. A hospital announcement crackled faintly through the courtyard speakers, "Shift change time." Lena inhaled slowly. "I have to go inside," she said gently. "But I'll be back tomorrow. Same time." The dog stood. Not urgently. Just with that calm, patient acceptance. She took a few steps back toward the entrance. Then paused. One more look. The dog sat again in the patch of sunlight exactly where he'd begun her morning. Watching her with that warm, steady presence. As if he knew something she didn't yet understand. As if he was waiting, not just for her arrival, but for her realization. Lena swallowed, her voice just a whisper. "What are you trying to tell me?" The dog didn't move. But the peace he radiated reached her anyway. And Lena felt deep in her chest that this gentle mystery was only beginning. The third morning felt different even before Lena stepped into the courtyard. The sunrise was softer. The air warmer. And something inside her, something quiet, was already expecting him. She walked through the garden gate with a slow breath, letting the morning settle around her like a warm blanket. The hydrangeas looked freshly watered, their petals glowing in the early light. And there he was. The golden mixed dog sat in his usual place, posture calm, eyes steady, as if he had been waiting for her the entire time, not impatiently, but faithfully. Lena smiled without meaning to. "Hey," she whispered. At the sound of her voice, the dog rose, not quickly, not excitedly, just with a familiar gentle intention. He walked toward her with slow, familiar steps. When he reached her, he stopped right in front of her feet. No paw on her shoe this time. No nudge. Just stillness. Like he was waiting for her to speak first. Lena felt her heart soften. "You're early," she murmured, crouching down. "Or maybe I'm late." The dog's ears twitched in the breeze. And then, softly, his gaze lifted past her shoulder. Toward the building. Toward a specific window. Toward room 214. Again. Lena followed his gaze without hesitation this time. "Always that window," she breathed. The dog stepped forward, not far, just one gentle pace, then sat down again. This time directly facing the hospital. Lena knelt beside him, her scrubs brushing against the dewy grass. "What do you see up there?" she asked quietly. The dog didn't look at her. He kept his eyes fixed on the second floor. His breathing deepened, slow, steady, peaceful. Almost as if the spot held a memory. A soft ache moved through Lena's chest. She wrapped her arms loosely around her knees. "That was Mr. Lawson's room," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was one of my favorites, though we're not supposed to say that." The dog turned his head slightly, just enough that one ear angled toward her voice. "He told me stories about his dog every night," Lena continued. "Said he had the gentlest soul. Said the dog always waited for him, no matter how long he was gone." Her breath softened. "He used to say, dogs remember love in ways people forget." The dog blinked slowly, lowering his head a little. And Lena felt that tiny, invisible thread tug again, connecting memory to presence, past to present, her heart to whatever this dog was carrying. But there was still something she wasn't understanding. The courtyard was quiet except for the faint hum of the hospital's air vents. Morning light created soft shadows under the dog's chin, giving him a calm, almost thoughtful expression. Lena reached out and let her hand rest lightly on his shoulder. "You always guide me right to this spot," she said softly. "You always look up there first." Her voice slowed. "Why does it matter to you?" The dog's gaze remained fixed on the window. But then, slowly, he closed his eyes for a moment. Just one gentle pause. A quiet, meaningful pause. When he opened them again, he turned toward her and touched his nose to her wrist. A soft, grounding touch. Lena exhaled shakily. "You're trying to tell me something," she whispered. "I know you are." Footsteps echoed from the far side of the courtyard, another nurse rushing to the morning shift. The dog didn't react. He stayed focused, steady, connected. Lena sat beside him, letting the moment stretch. "I wasn't there when Mr. Lawson passed," she said quietly. "I'd already switched shifts. He'd asked for me that night." Her voice wavered a little. It still bothers me." The dog leaned slightly closer, not enough to startle her, but enough to let her feel the warmth of him. It was a gentle reassurance. A presence without pressure. A comfort without words. Lena swallowed hard. Are you here because of him?" The dog didn't move. But something in his eyes shifted, just a soft glimmer, something warm, something almost like recognition. Lena felt a sudden, quiet warmth spread through her chest. "He talked about his dog having eyes just like yours," she whispered. "Warm, steady, loyal." The morning light wrapped around them, turning everything gold for a moment. The hydrangeas, the stones, the dog's fur, all glowing as if the world was holding still for them. Lena blinked away the dampness forming at the corner of her eyes. "You remind me of him," she murmured. "Of Mr. Lawson. Of the way he spoke. The way he cared." The dog lowered his head once again, as if acknowledging the memory. And then, slowly, he moved his paw toward her shoe. Not touching it. Just resting it in the grass beside her foot. Close. Intentional. Meaningful. Lena let out a shaky breath. "You're not just a morning visitor anymore," she said softly. The dog's tail moved once. Just one small, gentle sway. It wasn't excitement. It was agreement. Understanding. Connection. A soft voice called from inside the hospital, "Lena." "Shift's starting." She wiped the corner of her eye gently and stood. "I'll be back," she whispered. "Same time. Don't go anywhere." The dog sat calmly under the sunlight, watching her walk away. No whining. No following. Just steady, patient presence. And as Lena reached the door and glanced back, she saw him lift his gaze to room 214 once more, holding a quiet truth she hadn't yet uncovered. But she knew one thing for certain. The mystery was deepening. And the peace he brought her was becoming something she couldn't imagine her mornings without. By the fourth morning, Lena didn't just hope he'd be there. She knew he would be. The sunrise had barely touched the tops of the courtyard trees when she stepped onto the garden path, her breath forming a soft cloud in the cool air. The world felt peaceful in that early hour, dew glistening on leaves, a faint hum from the hospital vents, the distant clink of a metal cart being prepped for the morning shift. And then, just ahead, she saw him. The golden mixed dog sat in his familiar place near the hydrangea bench, posture calm, gaze steady, as if the morning didn't officially begin until she arrived. Lena slowed, warmth blooming in her chest. "There you are," she murmured. At the sound of her voice, the dog stood, not with excitement, not with urgency, but with the soft, deliberate grace she'd come to recognize. His tail moved once. Just one slow, gentle wave. As she approached, he walked toward her, stopping exactly at arm's reach. A quiet, mutual understanding. Lena knelt beside him. "You really waited," she whispered. The dog touched his nose to the sleeve of her scrub top, alight, careful gesture that felt almost like a greeting ritual now. And for a moment, the world felt still. Lena sat on the stone wall beneath the hydrangeas, letting her shoulders drop as the dog settled beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth, but not so close that he pressed. He always left space for her to choose. It made her eyes soften every time. "You know," she said quietly, "this little moment of peace might be the only thing keeping me sane." The dog blinked slowly, his ears relaxed, posture steady. He turned his head slightly, just enough to look at her, not enough to break his calm. Lena found herself smiling. She wasn't a person who smiled easily in the mornings. But this dog, somehow, brought it out of her. She leaned her elbows on her knees, hands folded loosely. "I've had a rough few months," she said softly. "Losing a patient, switching shifts, trying not to think about the things I didn't get to say." The dog listened. He always listened. Not with dramatic movements. Not with exaggerated reactions. Just with that stillness, steady, warm, grounding. Lena glanced at him. "You're a good listener," she murmured. His tail moved once in that gentle, reassuring way. A hospital volunteer pushing a small cart passed by the courtyard's edge. She spotted the dog and smiled. "Oh, there's the sweet boy," she called softly. "Still here every morning?" Lena turned. "You've seen him before?" "Oh, for weeks," the volunteer said. "He doesn't bother anyone. Just comforts people. Always has. It's like he chooses who needs him." She continued on her way inside, leaving her words hanging in the quiet air. Lena looked back at the dog. He looked at her. "You choose who needs you," she whispered. The dog didn't move. But the soft look in his eyes made something settle deep inside her. A quiet truth. A quiet bond. The morning breeze carried the scent of cut grass. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself breathe, really breathe. For the first time in months, she didn't feel the weight of exhaustion pressing on her chest. The heaviness she normally carried before every shift felt lighter. Softer. Like she wasn't alone in it anymore. When she opened her eyes, she found the dog watching her, head slightly lowered, ears relaxed. He wasn't seeking affection. He wasn't asking for anything. He was offering presence. Offering comfort. And she accepted it. She reached out and let her hand rest on his shoulder. A gentle touch. No pressure. No command. He leaned in just slightly. Barely. Just enough to show he welcomed it. Lena's voice came out softer than she expected. "Thank you." The dog exhaled quietly, almost like a soft sigh. She smiled again, a small, warm curve of her lips. "You're becoming part of my routine," she whispered. "And I don't mind it at all." The dog lifted his head and gazed once more toward the second-floor window. "Room 214. Lena followed his gaze instinctively. She didn't feel the sharp ache anymore. Not the same way. Instead, there was warmth. Memory, yes. But also peace. And she realized something. Each day he let her here, it hurt less. And felt more meaningful. Footsteps echoed from the hospital entrance. A coworker called. "Lena. You coming in?" She nodded toward the building but stayed sitting for one more breath. Then she looked at the dog. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said softly. "I hope you will be too." The dog stood, as if acknowledging the promise. Lena walked toward the door. At the doorway, she turned back because at this point, it felt wrong not to look. The dog sat again in his usual place, golden fur catching the early light, watching her with calm, gentle assurance. Not following. Not leaving. Just waiting. Patient. Purposeful. Peaceful. And the bond between them, quiet, unspoken, beautiful, felt stronger than ever. By the fifth morning, Lena didn't just expect him. She looked forward to him. Her pace quickened slightly as she crossed the small parking lot, coffee in one hand, bag slung over her shoulder. The sunrise painted soft amber tones across the courtyard stones, and the hydrangeas glowed in the early light. And then she saw him. Sitting calmly. Waiting. As if the quiet dawn belonged to the two of them alone. Lena's face softened. "There you are," she whispered. The golden mixed dog rose immediately, tail lowering in that gentle, respectful sway she'd grown to love. His steps were slow, deliberate, like he approached her the way one approaches something sacred. When he reached her, he paused. Then gave one soft nose touch to her wrist. His everyday greeting. Lena exhaled a small, warm laugh. "You always know exactly what I need," she said. They walked together, her steps slow, his steps quieter than the breeze. She sat down on the stone wall beneath the hydrangeas, and he settled beside her, close but not pressing. It amazed her, this little unspoken distance he always kept. Enough room for comfort, not enough for separation. She let her fingers brush lightly against his fur. "I've been thinking about you," she admitted softly. "About why you're here, and why you keep looking at that window." The dog lifted his head and followed her glance toward room 214. "Always that room. Every morning." Lena swallowed gently. "Was Mr. Lawson really your person?" she whispered. "Or, is there something else?" The dog's ears shifted at the sound of her voice. But his gaze stayed steady. A familiar voice approached, the volunteer from earlier in the week. She pushed a small cart of fresh linens across the courtyard and paused when she saw them. "There's our quiet guardian," she said warmly. "Still keeping people company." Lena glanced up. "Guardian?" "That's what we call him," the volunteer replied. "He's been comforting people around this hospital for a long time." Lena blinked. "Comforting?" "Oh, yes," the volunteer said, leaning lightly on her cart. "He sits with families who come in early. Follows visitors to the garden when they're crying. He even walked a young boy to the chapel once." The dog remained still, listening quietly. The volunteer lowered her voice gently. "He always seems to know who needs him." Lena looked at the dog with new, deeper eyes. "You're not just visiting," she whispered. "You're helping." The volunteer nodded. "That's what makes him special." Then she continued on her route, leaving Lena with a heart full of new questions. The dog nudged her sleeve softly. Once. Then looked again toward room 214. Lena inhaled. "You want me to remember something, don't you?" she murmured. "Something important." The dog's posture never changed, calm, patient, knowing. She rested her elbows on her knees, absorbing the volunteer's words. "You comfort people," she said quietly. "Just like Mr. Lawson said his dog did." Her voice softened. "He used to tell me stories about how his dog always sensed when he was having a bad day. Sat by him. Helped him breathe again." Her throat tightened. "You do that too." The dog exhaled slowly, almost like a gentle sigh. And suddenly, subtly, Lena realized something. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't routine. This was connection. Real, quiet, emotional connection. A soft rustle came from behind the hydrangeas. A young woman sat on a bench, wiping her eyes with a tissue. She looked anxious, shoulders tight, hands trembling. The dog looked at her. Then at Lena. Then at the woman again. Lena watched him with curiosity. "Go on," she whispered. "If you want." He stepped away from her, slow, calm, almost graceful, and walked toward the woman. Not fast. Not close. Just near enough for her to notice him. The woman looked up, startled. Then her expression softened. "Oh, hey, boy," she said in a shaky voice. The dog sat in front of her, just as he had with Lena those first mornings, still, gentle, offering presence without pressure. The woman sniffed, wiping her eyes again. "You're sweet," she whispered. "You remind me of my dad's dog." She reached forward. The dog leaned in just enough for her hand to touch his head. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes softened. Lena felt her heart swell. He was comforting her. He did know who needed him. Every part of the volunteer's story was true. After a few quiet minutes, the woman stood and headed inside, calmer than before. The dog returned to Lena's steady steps, gentle posture, then sat down beside her again, as if reporting back. Lena smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "You help everyone," she murmured. "Not just me." The dog looked up at her with those warm, amber eyes. But then, he shifted his gaze once more toward room 214. Lena followed it, her breath catching just slightly. "You keep bringing me back to him," she whispered. "To Mr. Lawson. To what I left unresolved." Her voice softened. "Maybe you're helping me too." The dog lowered his head and gently placed his paw beside her shoe. A soft, grounding presence. A quiet reminder. A bond that was growing deeper each day. The intercom chimed faintly. Shift time. Lena stood, smoothing her scrubs. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said, no longer a question. "Same time." The dog stood with her, tail swaying once in that slow, meaningful way. Lena walked toward the entrance. And like always, she turned one last time. The dog sat in his sunlight patch, watching her with calm devotion, gaze warm and steady. And she realized. She didn't just want to understand him. She needed to. Because the clues he was giving her were leading somewhere. Somewhere gentle. Somewhere emotional. Somewhere important. The mystery was no longer just a curiosity. It was becoming personal. By the 6th morning, Lena woke before her alarm. She didn't check her phone. She didn't rush. She simply got dressed, tied her hair back, and stepped out the door with a feeling in her chest she couldn't quite name. Anticipation. Warmth. A quiet pull toward the courtyard. As she approached the garden path, the sunrise washed the hospital grounds in soft gold. A faint mist clung to the grass. The air felt still, like the morning was waiting for something sacred to begin. And then she saw him. The golden mixed dog sat exactly where he always sat. But today, he didn't just rise when he saw her. Today, he stepped forward before she even spoke. As though he sensed something shifting. Lena slowed, her chest warming. "Good morning," she said softly. The dog came to her, gently touching his nose to her hand, then immediately turned his head toward room 214. Right away. No pause. No hesitation. Lena's breath caught. "Today feels important," she murmured. The dog looked up at her, steady, calm, knowing, and then walked a few feet toward the building. Not in a hurry. Just leading her. Just as he had from the beginning, but with new purpose. Lena followed him to the same spot beneath the second-floor window. The morning light streamed down in long soft rays, warming the stone beneath her feet. The dog sat. Facing the window. As always. But today, something felt different. The weight of the moment. The quiet tension. The sense of a truth waiting just out of reach. Lena inhaled slowly. "What do you want me to see?" she whispered. Before the dog could respond with his familiar quiet stillness, a voice called from behind her. "Excuse me, is that?" Lena turned. A middle-aged man and woman stood at the courtyard gate. The man held a small paper cup of coffee. The woman clutched a folder against her chest. Their expressions froze when they saw the dog. The woman's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my gosh," she whispered. "It's him." Lena blinked. "You know this dog?" The man stepped forward, eyes shining with recognition and surprise. "That's Charlie," he said. "My dad's dog." Lena's chest tightened. "Your dad?" The woman nodded, tears forming instantly. "Our father was Mr. Lawson." The world seemed to pause. The wind quieted. The sunlight steadied. The hydrangeas held still. And the dog, Charlie, remained seated beneath room 214, looking up at the window with soft, unwavering devotion. Lena swallowed hard. He's been here every morning. The woman nodded. We know. We've seen him a few times. But we live out of town, and we weren't sure how long he'd stay. The man sighed softly, voice thickening. Dad spent weeks in that room. Charlie would sit by the yard gate at home every day. After Dad passed, he came here. Lena stared at them. He came to the hospital? Yes, the woman whispered. We don't know how he tracked the place down. But he kept walking here, rain, shine, everything. He sits here every morning. Looks at Dad's room. Lena felt her heart swell and break at the same time. Every morning, she repeated. He waits every morning. The woman's voice cracked. He always waits for the people he loves. The dog turned his head toward them, not excited, not surprised, just acknowledging their presence, then returned his gaze to the window. As if honoring a memory. Lena knelt beside the dog, her voice shaking slightly. You were waiting for him, she murmured. Even after he was gone. The man's eyes softened. Charlie doesn't understand loss the way we do. He understands presence. Routine. Love. The woman wiped her eyes. And maybe he stayed because he wasn't just waiting for Dad. Lena blinked. What do you mean? Dad always talked about you, the woman said. About Nurse Lena. He said you made him feel safe. Said you understood him better than most. The man added quietly. He said that if anything ever happened to him, he hoped someone would be there for Charlie the way Charlie was there for him. Lena's breath left her body in a slow, trembling exhale. She looked at the dog, at Charlie, and her eyes warmed with understanding. You found me, she whispered. Because I reminded you of him. Charlie placed his paw gently beside her foot. Not touching, just close. A sign of trust. A sign of memory. A sign of devotion. Her heart broke open in the gentlest way. The Lawson children stepped closer, kneeling too. He loved this dog more than anything, the man said. Charlie was his best friend. He used to say, the woman whispered, dogs carry the best parts of us forward. Lena blinked away tears. I think he was right. Charlie leaned his head slightly toward her knee, soft, warm, steady. A gesture that said everything he couldn't. That he remembered. That he recognized her kindness. That he found comfort in her presence. Just as his owner once did. Just as she now found in him. The woman placed a gentle hand on Lena's arm. You don't have to. But Lena answered softly before she could finish. I want to, she whispered. I want to be here for him. The dog lifted his head toward her voice. As if hearing the promise. As if believing it. And in that moment, beneath the soft morning sun, Lena felt something shift deep inside her. The dog's quiet presence wasn't just a routine. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't random. It was love carried forward. Memory made real. Healing disguised as a gentle morning ritual. The emotional truth had begun to shine through. And Lena knew the journey wasn't over. The seventh morning arrived with a soft haze drifting over the courtyard, as if the world itself wanted to keep everything quiet for what was about to unfold. Birds perched on the railings, their silhouettes faint against the pale sun. Dew clung to every blade of grass, glimmering like tiny pearls. Lena walked slowly, her heart already swelling with anticipation. She wasn't simply coming to work anymore. She was coming to him. And there he was, Charlie, sitting in his same patch of morning sunlight, the golden hue warming his fur and giving him that peaceful, almost timeless look. But something was different today. He didn't rise when she approached. He stayed seated, watching her with the softest, warmest eyes. As if he knew today wasn't routine. Today was something deeper. Lena knelt in front of him. Hey, sweetheart, she whispered. I see you. Charlie lifted his head slowly and placed his nose against her palm, longer this time, lingering, as though he were saying thank you. Her eyes dampened. "You were waiting for me again," she murmured. Charlie's tail moved once, just that gentle, signature sway. The Lawson siblings, Mark and Emily, had promised to return this morning. Lena saw them enter the courtyard a few minutes later, walking slowly, reverently, as if approaching a sacred place. "He's here," Emily whispered, placing a hand over her heart. "Just like always." Charlie turned his head toward them but didn't leave Lena's side. He acknowledged them with calm familiarity. Mark exhaled softly. He always did know how to choose his people. Lena looked up at them, her voice emotional but steady. "He's been helping me," she said quietly. "More than I think he knows." Emily nodded. "He helped Dad the same way." Lena's breath caught. "What was their routine?" she asked softly. "What did he do when he was waiting?" Mark exchanged a glance with his sister, then knelt next to Charlie. "Dad would sit at the window every morning," Mark said. "Even when he got weak. He'd look outside, watch the garden, wait for Mom's visits." Emily added gently, "And Charlie would sit at the yard gate at the exact same time. Every day. Like he could see Dad, even when he couldn't." Lena's chest tightened with warmth. "And when Dad passed," Emily continued, "Charlie still went to the gate every morning. Until one day, he just started walking. Heading toward the hospital. Toward that window." She looked at Charlie, eyes softening. "He must have recognized the place." Mark's voice softened. "He's been keeping the routine alive. For Dad. For himself. Maybe for you, too." Charlie leaned into Lena's hand, his breath warm on her palm. And something inside Lena understood, finally, fully. "He came here," Lena whispered, "because he remembered love." Emily nodded. "Yes. And he approached me," Lena's voice wavered, "because I reminded him of the person who cared for his owner." Mark smiled gently. "Dad always said you had a calming presence." Lena looked down at Charlie. "You were looking for comfort," she said softly. "For someone who felt familiar. Someone who cared." A single tear slipped down her cheek. Charlie nudged her wrist gently, as if brushing the tear away. She let out a quiet laugh through the warmth in her throat. "You sweet, loyal soul." The courtyard felt like its own small universe, still, glowing, held together by emotion and memory. The hydrangeas rustled softly. Sunlight pooled at their feet. A distant intercom announcement drifted through the air and faded again. Lena remained kneeling beside Charlie. The Lawson siblings sat nearby, giving them space. Lena spoke again, softly, tenderly. "You weren't lost," she whispered. "You were looking for connection." Charlie blinked slowly, sinking into the quiet moment. "You came to me every morning, because your heart remembered the routine," she said. "And maybe you felt something in me that felt like him." Charlie raised his paw, and gently rested it beside her knee. Not a touch. A placement. A connection. And Lena felt the message clearly now. He wasn't grieving alone anymore. He wasn't waiting alone anymore. He had found someone who matched the kindness he once knew. Her voice trembled as she whispered. "You chose me, didn't you?" Charlie's tail moved, soft, slow, meaningful. Mark exhaled quietly. "I think he did," he said. "And Dad would have loved that." Emily wiped the corner of her eye. He would have wanted Charlie to be with someone gentle. Someone who feels like home. The dog leaned gently against Lena's leg, trusting her fully. Lena rested a hand on his back, feeling his breath rise and fall, steady, soothing. And in that moment, she felt it. This wasn't just Charlie's healing. It was hers too. The weight she carried from room 214. The regret of not being there when Mr. Lawson passed. The guilt she didn't speak aloud. It was all being softened by the presence of this loyal dog who had been carrying his own grief. Their broken pieces aligned quietly. Beautifully. Naturally. Charlie wasn't there to haunt a memory. He was there to honor it. and to help Lena find peace in her own heart. The morning breeze shifted. Sunlight glowed warmer. A soft feeling, like closure beginning to form, settled over the courtyard. Lena exhaled gently. "Thank you for finding me," she said. Charlie closed his eyes for a moment, resting his head lightly against her hand, an answer in its own way. An answer filled with love. With memory. With the heart-touching truth she had waited to understand. The eighth morning rose with a softness that felt almost deliberate, as though the sky itself knew this chapter needed to begin gently. A pale golden light washed over the courtyard, warming the hydrangeas, brushing softly across the stone path, and filling the garden with a peaceful glow. Lena walked slowly this time. Not with anticipation. Not with anxiety. But with a calmness she hadn't felt in months. Her steps were steady. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breath deep and unhurried. She reached the courtyard, and she didn't have to search for him. Charlie stood there already waiting, but not with the weight of longing he once carried. There was a lightness in his posture now, a gentle ease in the way he held himself. As soon as she stepped through the gate, he walked toward her, tail swaying in that slow, meaningful way that had become their silent language. Lena crouched down, a warm smile forming naturally. "Good morning, sweet boy." Charlie touched his nose to her hand once, soft, purposeful, then sat beside her, leaning gently against her leg without hesitation. He had never leaned before. Not fully. Not like this. Lena's heart swelled. "You're trusting me more," she whispered. Charlie's eyes softened, and he let out a quiet breath, the kind of breath dogs release when they feel safe. The Lawson siblings arrived a few minutes later. They walked slowly, carrying a small box wrapped in soft blue fabric. "Hey, Charlie," Mark said gently. Charlie acknowledged them with a calm glance, but stayed beside Lena. The closeness felt natural now, like their bond had settled into something steady, rooted, and mutual. Emily knelt in front of them, opening the small box. Inside lay a simple leather collar, worn, soft, well-loved. Attached to it was a tiny metal tag shaped like a heart. Lena's voice caught. "Is that?" Emily nodded. "Dad's favorite collar for him. He always said it made Charlie look handsome." Mark smiled lightly. "We kept it safe. But it feels like it belongs with him again." Lena looked at Charlie. Charlie looked at her. Almost asking permission. Almost saying, "I'm ready." Lena lifted the collar gently. "Can I?" she whispered. Charlie lowered his head willingly. Carefully, lovingly, she placed the collar around his neck. It settled comfortably against his fur, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. When she fastened it, her breath trembled. Emily's eyes glistened. "He looks right again." Mark nodded. "Whole again." And somehow, Lena felt whole too. They sat together for a moment, Lena, Charlie, Mark, and Emily, beneath the soft morning sun. No one rushed the silence. No one filled it with words. The quiet was healing. Warm. Complete. Lena finally spoke softly. "What happens now?" she asked. Emily looked at her with a gentle smile. "That's up to you." Mark added, "Charlie's been coming here for weeks. He chose this place. He chose you." The words settled over the courtyard like a blessing. Lena looked at Charlie. Charlie looked at her. And the truth was already there, warm, steady, and simple. She wasn't losing him to the past. He wasn't tied to grief anymore. They had found each other in the middle of healing. Lena stroked his fur gently. "If you want to stay with me," she whispered, "I'd love that." Charlie leaned fully into her, no hesitation, no uncertainty. A quiet yes, offered in the only way he knew how. The Lawsons smiled, comforted and relieved. "You're giving him a new home," Emily said softly. "And he's giving you something too." Lena's throat tightened. "He's given me more peace than I knew I needed." Mark nodded. "That's what Dad would have wanted for both of you." A soft breeze moved through the hydrangeas. The sunlight warmed their shoulders. Charlie closed his eyes for a moment, breathing calmly, settled in content. No more waiting at window ledges. No more searching for memories. No more walking alone with grief. Now, he had someone to walk with. A hospital announcement echoed in the distance, shift change. But the sound didn't feel intrusive today. It felt like a marker, a gentle reminder that life was still moving forward, and so were they. Lena stood slowly. "I have to work," she said softly, touching Charlie's collar. "But I'll be back. We'll walk home together." Charlie looked up at her with calm certainty. Trusting. Knowing. Connected. She smiled and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you." Charlie exhaled a warm, steady breath. Emily placed a hand on Lena's arm. "Thank you for giving him a new chapter." Lena nodded. "He gave me one too." As she walked toward the entrance, she turned, as she always did, to look back. But today, Charlie didn't stay behind. He stood and followed her to the door, only as far as the entrance allowed, but close enough to show that his days of waiting alone were over. Lena placed her badge on the scanner, paused, and glanced back one more time. Charlie sat proudly, the morning sun catching his new old collar, his eyes warm and peaceful. Not searching. Not longing. Not grieving. Just waiting, with trust. A new routine. A new bond. A new beginning. Lena whispered with a soft smile, "See you after my shift." And Charlie's gentle tail sway answered everything. Their story, born from memory and healing, was only just beginning.